Da 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 da! I'm here, you guys. Amazing, amazing. I had such a full day today. I had a actually really quite an enjoyable day out and about with my second youngest sister, who's becoming more and more of a best friend. I don't have a lot of friends in my life. My sisters have always been my friends, but because she was so young, when I say they always are friends, because all we had was each other, right? But as we grew older, right, our own individual personalities showed up and we kind of went our own ways. But in that family unit, we were always connected. And in fact, we never left Winnipeg. When we moved to Winnipeg, my father moved us here when we were 18 years old. And we're all here. All my sisters are here. My mother passed away here. Oh my goodness. She actually passed away on Remembrance Day, 11/11. But what year was it? See, I don't really. I haven't been keeping proper track of it. It may have been 2013, maybe, right? I'm not somebody who dwells on things that are heavy once things are past, unless I think they're actually relevant in my movement. I usually will let that weight go off of me. I think it's why I'm able to take on so much more. It's just because my life accommodates it, right? Like, Cindy accommodates it. I was actually thinking about this. I walked home from my sister's tonight after I went out thrifting with her, and then I went to her house, and she lives on another part of the city, a beautiful part of the city, older part of the city. And I drive by it all the time. I drive by it, but I have never walked that neighborhood, right? Well, maybe parts of it, but I've never walked up those strips that I always drive by. And I walked home tonight, and I got to walk by all those buildings and everything. So it was a beautiful, beautiful walk. But I went over to her house and we did some listing. I helped her list, right? She had some My Little Ponies she wanted to list on eBay. So I took all the pictures and everything. We worked as a team, and she's been wanting to get it together, but she works almost full time, or she's trying to arrange her hours like I do. So she's giving, a few shifts a week to her job, and then a few shifts a week to herself, right? To build an enjoyable life and at the same time move herself forward by that little bit of entrepreneurship, right, that she's into. And she just loves being an eBay seller. She raised her family. She's been doing it for, I have to say, 20 or 30 years. She's amazing at it. She knows her thing, but it does take a lot of time. And I wish she hits those big ones every once in a while. I remember my sister hitting a marble. She found a marble and she sold this marble for almost $1,000 US. Right? It was a marble, right? I couldn't believe it. She found one of those really expensive watches, the ones with the crown, the design with the crown. I can't remember what it's called, but a very, very expensive top of the line watch one time. Lots of times she's hit it big. But again, she puts all that money back into, collecting stock and putting a roof over her family's head. Now her family is growing and she's on her own now, and she's doing absolutely amazing. And I'd like to see her, right, hit a big one. But what was I going to say? So number one, I understand I am late tonight, but I am, right. It is. I'm not going to apologize for it because the day was fantastic. We got lots done. Wait till you see this picture I bought today. I know, right? I'm trying to buy my glasses here. I actually went to order my glasses today. We picked the frames out. We were ready to pay, but she had to take her my eye measurements, and then it turned out that the frames that we picked, we weren't too sure whether or not she could get, because my prescription is so high, whether she could order those in for me. So she's got to get back to me. So that, right? I tried, but we didn't get that done. But we'll go in tomorrow and see if we can get that done, or maybe she'll phone me and say, no, your prescription's too high, and we'll try a different way. Right? I'm getting this done, and I got lots of stuff done today, and I'm really pleased with how I'm ending my day. I'm not even leaving the house. That's why I decided to walk home from my sister. Right? It was a nice evening. It's mild outside before it starts snowing and getting icy out there. I thought I'd try and get some Mother Nature, which was the plan for the weekend. I'll try and get a little bit more in before the end of my days off. But tomorrow I'm dedicating to editing my last installment of my trip that I did this September. So tomorrow's dedicated to that and my laundry, because I can do that in between the editing, right? Because I'm one of those people, I can give her for an hour, but then I gotta get up for 20 minutes and do something different and let all that stuff go, and then come back with fresh eyes and fresh ideas. And it's always, that's how I work. If it, right, I always think, well, if it needs to get done, do it. Don't just make a mental note to do it. Just do it. And if you were doing something else, you got to decide, was it really important? And sometimes getting those small details done, right, makes all the difference. It makes it so that I can do the things that I don't prefer to do, like editing, right? So I always refer my editing as turnips that I'm mixing in the mashed potatoes, right? So I can get the turnips down. So I mix it with something that I do like, right? Christmas dinner, there was always a great big gob of mashed carrots and turnips on my plate. Oh man, did I hate mashed carrots and turnips. But I love Christmas dinner, turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy and stuffing. But that big orange gob on my plate just ruined Christmas dinner, and I had a hard time. Oh, in my pocket, you guys, you might find this interesting. It's sterling silver, and if you can see, if I can get it angled properly, it's two seals. Can you see that? It's a mummy seal and a baby seal. And it's a brooch, but it can also be used, whoopsie, as a pendant. It could be used as a pendant. And it's sterling silver. And you guys, can you see that? That's mammoth bone. I can't sell it. There's nowhere's, right, I can sell something like this, because it is, right, it is almost like a fossil, right? You can't sell fossil bone, but because this was like it's special permission, like the Inuit are able to do these carvings and stuff, right? But you can't leave the country, right? And you can't list it on eBay. It's a pretty piece. So it's going to stay with me, because nothing can be done with it. But what a beautiful piece, right? Yeah, what a beautiful mammoth. It's mammoth, right? My goodness, it could be 10,000 years old. Okay, you guys, let's have a sip of coffee. And aren't we excited and nervous at the same time to see what is the first word that we're going to pick this week, right? I know it's going to reflect somehow in how things have been going, or where my next movement is going to be, or a lesson that I need to take in, or we need to take in. Yep. So let's just get into it and get this over and done with. My highlighter, right? We are going to pick The first word, or actually, it's the 15th word. We've been doing this for 15 weeks now. The whole week, we talk about this one word that I'm going to pick today. I have a whole page of words here, and I'm just blindly picking a word. And we're just the first day. We're just going to kind of fly with it, so it'll be a first impression, a first perspective, the first thing that comes to mind, and that's how I will go at the word. Now, of course, knowing that what the word is, right? Maybe I'll be inspired by a conversation or a lesson that I take in the morning, right? Guaranteed it'll be suggested already waiting for me when that's how good Google is. It'll all be already waiting for me when I get up in the morning, right? But let's pick the topic. First impressions. Here we go, you guys. Here we go. Here we go. Acceptance. Wow. The first thing. Oh my goodness. I didn't want to come. I was having a good I was having a good day. No, I'm still having a good day, but the first thing came to mind is that lack of acceptance that I've always had. You know, until I was an adult, and it was really, really strange. I always felt insignificant. I always felt like I was a burden, even within my own family. When we would go out and stuff, I always trailed behind, right? And I always felt like that one pop at the back, right? If it went missing, nobody would even miss it. Nobody would even notice it was gone, right? But if it's tagging along, it's tagging along. And that's always how I felt, right? This is the 15th word. I'm just going to write 15 beside that so I know when I do the cards, right? Yeah, so acceptance, that feeling of lack when it came to acceptance, even within my own family, it was always a sense of tolerance. This is the impression, looking back at my childhood and looking at that little girl that I was, right? And I thought, oh my goodness, right? You're so fat, you're so stupid. You're so good for nothing. Just be grateful. Just be grateful. Try not to rock the boat. Try not to be seen. Try not to be heard. Try not to catch, right, people's attention. And it's a sad state, to have that, because if you look at the world we live in now, where a lot of these children are growing up with only one parent, right? I'm very grateful, that I had a difficult parent. I did, I didn't get here uh through that lack of not having any trauma. And it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder, so it's all those small things that kind of built up, and then you just kind of finally break in that, right? But that's not what we're talking here. But it's in that sensitivities to this, and we sometimes pull it back. Pull it back. Acceptance. See, I was just going to go and off, right? I was going to be off. But that's the end of the day, right? If this was part of my morning routine, you get that fresh energy. But the thing is, you don't get those fresh experiences, and you don't get the come down of that amazing energy, because it was amazing today. We went out for lunch. Thank goodness we went out for lunch, because I didn't get home until after 10 o'clock. It's after 11 now, right? And but it was an amazing day, and tomorrow I'm buckling down editing video, right? And doing laundry. We're going to pull it back together in this acceptance and that first impression, right? I wanted to keep it light, right? Wanted to keep it light because I was in a good mood and I was kind of, right, I'm good with how my day went. I don't usually fill it up with those many different things, and it's kind of exciting. It breaks up the monotony, and it brings um the things that we don't expect to be able to come across our paths, to have different experiences. It felt like a different experience. It was lovely walking home in a neighborhood that I knew quite well from driving by it, but not actually experiencing it tonight too. Acceptance. And what popped into my head is my acceptance of myself, right? Never felt like I belonged, right? I never felt like I was accepted. I felt like I was tolerated, right? But that's a hard way to go about your life, to be feeling segregated. Now, to say honestly, right, my sister Tracy and I, because we were so close together, but we were very, very different from each other because I didn't feel like I was accepted. She included me quite a bit. We did a lot of things. We did a lot of things together. It wasn't until our teenage years that, those individual kind of personalities kind of separated us, where we did our own things after that, right? And at that point, I was starting to make friends too, because again, I had some good influence come into my life that made it a possibility. And through my choices, I accepted that I was, maybe this is where that word, despite, right? Because in high school I really did use that I should be able to enjoy my life just like everybody else. Maybe I have handicaps, but everybody has handicaps. Some handicaps are visible, some handicaps are emotional, some of them are mental, sometimes they're social, sometimes they're economic, sometimes they're a combination of a lot of those things, right? And we can beat ourselves up because we it's not like we're not aware that we have these small traits. But again, we're not being accepted, we look for the reason, right? We look for the reason, and then we go, oh, it's because I'm like this, or I'm not like this, or because I'm so fat. It was because I was fat in any way. Kids are just nasty. Kids just want to bring you down to their level. And when things aren't going well for them, they don't want to hold it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want it to be theirs, right? They just pass it down the line. It's just like a bad manager who passes the bad instructions down to a bad supervisor, and the bad supervisor is going, rah, rah, I don't know, right? And then they pass it down to the employees until, right? And especially when you're in the restaurant business, and then it gets all the way down to a bus person or a hostess or something, and you can ruin whole shifts. It's just so viral. You know what I mean? Just and it's why I have this picture here, right? It says 1,000 candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened, right? And that's the truth. But the opposite is true. The opposite is true too, right? I very rarely go into the store in a bad mood, and if I'm not in a preferable mood, nobody would know it. On the norm, nobody would know it, right? Okay, acceptance. There was a period in my life where I got to meet some really, really cool people, some really beautiful people, lots of fun, handsome, right? Beautiful women. And we were friends. We were a gang that hung out together. We hung out together for years. And some of my best friends and some of the people who are closest to me in my life were amongst that group. It was a time when I was able to be myself, and I was 311 pounds. And yet I was totally I have pictures here. Oh, do we have time? Can I even find? Oh, wow. Right? It was the most amazing time. And here's a picture of me at 311 pounds. I was there. Now I've lost quite a bit of weight since then, but at the same time, I've gained 50 of it back. And it took 20 years to gain that weight back. But eventually, I did. Here's another picture of why am I showing these terrible pictures? But that's me, right? I was no less unhappy then as I am now. I was right, and that wasn't not a John Candy laugh about your weight and stuff. I never put myself down, and in fact, I used to love to wear really nice clothes, and they were very expensive for the plus size girls, right? But 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 yeah, like I was no less happy. And then this was me probably at my smallest. This was just a picture of a guy that I cut out of there. But look at me. I was like, oh, 135, 140 pounds at that time. There again. Another. So you can see that idea of acceptance, right? And I got into this really cool growth. Oh, he's one of my favorite people in the whole world. That's my brother-in-law Ian, and he turned out he walked me down the aisle. He was one of my best friends, and he ended up marrying my sister. He's my brother-in-law now, so absolutely amazing. Well, I've never shown you a picture of my sister Tracy. You wouldn't believe what she looks like now. She's 1/4 of that size. She's a tiny, tiny little lady, and that's my sister. That's my sister Tracy. Okay, I'm just was trying to look. Oh well, here's that's me and my husband. That was me trying out short hair. Yeah, my husband was in the military. Yeah, he was a redneck kind of guy. Yeah, me in my wedding dress, and see, I went down the aisle by bagpipes. I didn't think it was going to be a picture day, but when you talk about acceptance, right? We look at these pictures of ourselves, me and Mother Nature. Oh, just love Mother Nature. Just love Mother Nature. And a picture again of my husband and me, right? But so many changes in my life. I have been so many different people. I was just looking for one particular picture here. I have been so many different people in my life, but it was all in an attempt to be accepted in my life, right? To be accepted. There's a picture of my dad. This one right here. This is my dad right here. That was when he was a lumberjack. He was a lumberjack in that one. He always took the hardest jobs, my dad, and yet he had congenital heart disease. I made my wedding bouquet. It was just as big as the flower girl was. I made that. That was pretty good. That's just part of my creative. I'm just looking for a picture, you guys. Oh my goodness, come on. Because it would just kind of tie it in. But it wasn't because of how I looked, because I was 311 pounds. I don't find it was one particular picture that I was looking for. And yeah, I don't see it here. But if I ever come across it, I'll show you I'll show you a picture of our gang. And it was amazing gang, and it was a gang that accepted me for who I was. And they were some of the best years of my entire life and some of my greatest loves in that time span. And when I lost all that weight, and when I say, some of my greatest loves, I actually lost that weight not for myself. I didn't lose that weight for myself. I lost that weight um, because somebody couldn't accept me as they accepted me as a friend, but they couldn't accept me as a partner because of my weight, because this man was like model material. He could have been a model, but he was my best friend. We spent almost we practically lived together. It was every day. We were so close, and he was the most amazing human being ever. I said was because he's since passed away, right? And it was heartbreaking at that time. But, maybe when we talk about acceptance, maybe that story tomorrow, maybe I can tie it in, or sometime this week, because there's a big lesson in acceptance there. And some of the choices that I made around that topic of acceptance, I made some choices because um, um, of that word acceptance. And I'm looking at it now, and actually I'll just say it, right? After I lost all that weight, I lost the weight for this guy, right? He was the love of my life. And we had it was such a great friendship. We were afraid, like, we tried. That's all I can say is we tried. But it was so uncomfortable because we were so close, such good friends. We couldn't sacrifice it because we had been at that level for so long to go in any other direction. It was just so uncomfortable. That love was there, but breaking through, getting past that barrier, it was uncomfortable for both of us. And so we just kind of um stayed for friends as I was going through that. He was with me every single day as I was losing that weight. He was my greatest cheerleader, my best friend. And, I thought I was going to end up with him. And, I was at the bar one night, and all my girlfriends in that group, right? Because you kind of look at it differently now than I did then. This group was everything to me back then. And they said, well, he didn't want you when you were skinny or when you were fat, right? When you were overweight. He didn't want you when you were at 311 pounds, right? Why would you want that for yourself? Why would you, right? And I just kind of, because I was so uncomfortable, right? I was so freaked out about getting that close because I knew we were close, right? And I used that. I made a choice, and I used, my friend said, yeah, I agree with my friends. Why? You didn't want me when I was three. But the thing is, I look at it now, and it's perfectly acceptable because, right? It's a matter of what are we looking for in our partners, and what's important in those relationships, right? And you have to have that comfortableness, and it wasn't comfortable. And in that uncomfortableness, I just wanted the uncomfortableness to end. And so I made that choice. I said, oh, yes, you're so right. He doesn't deserve me now. And he deserved me more than anybody could have possibly did. He stuck with me the whole time that I was losing that weight. Greatest cheerleader, best friend, sweetest man. And in the end, I made a different choice, right? and it worked out okay because I met my husband, and he was amazing too. He was super 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 amazing. And but all the guys that I had those relationships were they were special, every single one of them. And why were they special? It's because they accepted me, right? Because they accepted me for who I was. Even though this one gentleman that I was mad for, that I had lost all that weight for, right, couldn't accept me as a 311-pound girlfriend, right? He could accept me as his 311-pound best friend in the whole world, right? And that was good because it was in that influence and in that. Right? He loved me anyway. It didn't matter. Love is love, right? And there's all kinds of different love, and that relationship was absolutely amazing, and it went on for years, and he sacrificed himself too. He could have had a different life, but we all make our choices, don't we? We all make our choices, but the reason I was with these people is because they made me feel accepted when I didn't feel accepted. I mean, I wasn't even accepting myself. And that was part of the problem in not being able to connect, right, with the one that I thought I loved, right? And then feeling that connection wholeheartedly because, right, my husband didn't have to experience me as 311 pounds, but that acceptance of me was there because I didn't realize when you lose 160 pounds, which is what I lost. I think it was 360 pounds altogether. When you lose that kind of weight, I didn't realize things don't go back to normal. Oh my goodness. I had boobies to the ankles, right? My stomach just kind of hung there in a big flap of skin. And I had to have that cosmetic surgery, right? It was oh my body looked worse skinny than it did when it was heavy. At least everything was tight and expanded when I was big, but when I was skinny, all that loose skin right? It was absolutely unexpected. I didn't realize. It didn't even cross my mind. And but I was with my husband at that time, or then wasn't my husband then, right? But I had met my husband in that span before I had all that plastic surgery. He didn't know I was going to have that surgery. And in fact, my husband tried to talk me out of the boob jobs, and nobody was going to. I did that for me. I did that for the experience of feeling just as beautiful on the outside, right, as I was in the inside, right? So that people could accept me a little bit better because I had come to realize it was really all about what I look like. I grew up, my mother or my grandfather, or sorry, my grandmother and my father used to say to me all the time, Cindy, it's what's in the inside that counts. But then when you lose 160 pounds and then all of a sudden the guys are chasing you, and right, you get to realize really, really fast that that's not true, right? I had very difficult time finding partners when I was heavy. Skinny, no problem. My personality hadn't changed at all. I was still the same person on the inside, right? But then again, I have to think what reflected on the outside, right? Because when I lost all that weight, even though I accepted myself, right? Other people didn't accept me at 311 pounds. But when I lost that weight, I was already accepting myself. But finally, for the first time in my entire life, I could see not only were other people accepting me, right? They wanted to be around me. And it made me happy. It made me joyful, right? Because it was an experience I had never had before. And that's positive feeling. And the more I had that positive feeling, right, then the happier I got and the better things got and more, right, the more shine and more I attracted to that, right? But slowly, right, you gain a few pounds, you go, oh my goodness, I've gained 10 pounds. And then you start verbally beating yourself up, right? And not accepting yourself anymore. That miserable seeps in, right? You start cranking at yourself, saying those negative things about yourself, ruining your diet, right? Overeating. And you see that weight come on, and then you just get more miserable, and right? And then you spend more time on the gambling machines, which is what I did because I was a compulsive gambler. So I spent more time on the gambling machines, and because I lost so much money there was now stress in my life of how I was going to explain to my husband where the money was, right? How I was going to juggle the bills so I could keep the groceries in the cupboard at the same time, right? Have the utilities keep going, right? Oh my goodness, it was absolutely terrible. And in that miserable came in full force, right? And I was back to being no happier skinny than I was when I was heavier. And it was just all in my mentality. It was all in my mentality because I no longer, right, accept myself, don't accept myself, accept myself, don't accept myself, right? All in that process of those experiences, those big experiences that come into your life, and right, you get tumbled around in the dryer a little bit, right? We adapt, we conquer, we look for things that will take us away from that pain, right? Those things that will make us feel like we are um, feeling like we belong, right? Feeling like we're surrounding ourselves with people. Oh my goodness, I mean such a mess here, right? Such a mess here. But feeling like we're accepted, we're in a situation, or not a situation, we're in a an atmosphere, right? We're in an atmosphere that are full of people that are just as accepting in that time, right? Because you're off on the dance floor every once in a while, going for to have a dance, right, with your girlfriends. But then you would be right back on those VLTs, and then that would be your best friend. But at the same time, you're feeling like you're hanging out with your friends, right? But really, you're not hanging out with anybody, right? Because you're just so miserable. I dug my own hole. I can't imagine why my marriage lasted the 8 years that I did, but it was in that uncomfortableness, and it was in that not being able to accept myself and not to be able to accept my faults, right? Right? And recognizing though when I was accepted, right? In those I was in my 20s, right? From 20, say 20 to 30 years old. The best time. Oh my goodness. So much fun. And I was 311 pounds, and it was some of the best memories of my entire life. I accepted myself in that, right? Like I didn't have a problem. But when we talk about acceptance, and then we talk a little bit about, how I used it as an excuse because I was uncomfortable of going past, right, the relationship boundaries that we had set up, that we both set those up. He was just as uncomfortable as I did, but it is how it plays out, right? In relationships, it's how it plays out, and I don't blame uh, either any of my partners, no matter what stages of life, what love, whether it was the love and the friendship, right? Whether it was love and relational, whether it was, with my husband or with my peers at work, right? It's just different kinds of love, but it's still love. And maybe that uncomfortable was just to say, no, that's not for you, right? Because I did end up making an amazing choice, right? And if I had chosen, right, the one, I would never have met my husband. And he was absolutely amazing. And he treated me right up to the last moment with much kindness. Much kindness, right? I think it was much more tolerant of how the uh, relationship evolved than I did, right? I don't know if right? It's not like he was faultless or anything, right? And me playing video lottery tournaments was not the only, like I said, that miserable and that self-beating and then losing that acceptance of myself, right? To delve in because I'm having problems of juggling bills and I'm trying to de-stress. So I'm eating so much that I'm gaining the weight, but gaining the weight makes me bad self-talk myself, right? Gets me to the point where I can't accept myself. And if I can't accept myself, how can I expect anybody else to accept me? Right? Right? So this idea, right? I love the pink ice donuts with the sprinkles. I eat a dozen of them every single day if I thought I could get away with it, right? Without getting to 300 pounds. But I know how I talk. I'm comfortable at the weight I am at right now, right? I see what too skinny looks like. I see what too heavy looks like. This is a good weight. If I were to get super sick, got COVID, or I got a little bit on me, right? It's wintertime. It's right. You put a little bit of meat on just to get you through the winter. But I'm good with the weight that I'm at now. I accept myself, but I don't allow myself to get much bigger, make much bigger than this without that negative talk hitting in. And I understand the only solution for me is just to keep the weight off. You got no choice because of the way I talk about myself, the way I beat myself up, the guilt and shame that surfaces when, right, that I come off my diet or if I eat something that I know I'm not supposed to eat, or if I bought a jar of peanut butter when I'm not supposed to be eating peanut butter. I bought a jar of peanut butter. I was trying to save for glasses. It's cheap. Toast and peanut butter. I can live on toast and peanut butter. It says no dishes. I had videos to edit. I had lessons to take in. It keeps the house clean. I can live on peanut, and it gives me protein, right? But it also causes inflammation in my body because I love peanut butter so much. A jar of peanut butter doesn't last me very long, right? But what was I saying that? Right, because I can't accept myself in what I fail at because of how I talk to myself, right? And it's not just me, it's all my sisters, right? We're too skinny, we're too fat, right? I can't stay on a diet. And it was just that fear because obesity runs deep in both sides of my family. My grandmother on my dad's side was over 500 pounds, and on my mother's side, she had two brothers, and both of her brothers, one brother was over 600 pounds, and the other brother was over 500 pounds. Her mother was a big lady too. She was tall and big, but I don't remember her very much because I only remember her from being in a wheelchair because she had diabetes. Right? She died when I was very very young, so I don't remember her too much. Right? So my parents' fear of having the obese children, right, because it runs in the family, is what caused me to be obese, right? It did. It's that comment. It's that It's that rebellion maybe as a child, right? I'll show you, I'll get a job. I was working by the time, like actually working by the time I was 10 years old. I got special permission by the city of Vancouver. I don't know why at 10 years old to stay over on weekends and watch foster children that this lady she was the foster mother, but she worked on the weekends for extra money and she did the night shift. And I would stay overnight. I would go over there on Friday and then I would go home on Sunday because I didn't want to have days off. And right, it just wasn't comfortable to be around the house in those. So I would just go and stay at this lady's house on Friday, and then I come home on Sunday, and I make $100 at 10 years old. I made $100 every weekend. I made $100, and what was I going to say about working when I was 10 years old, and at that time, I would just go to the store and buy treats. It was my money, but when I was making $100 a week, $100, I think it was $50, $50. No, it was $100 a month. I paid towards rent as soon as I started working. And then when I ended high school and we moved to Winnipeg, I stayed at my parents' house for a little while until me and my sister, we settled, moved in together for a bit. And yeah, I paid them $250 for a room. It was their idea of teaching me responsibility. I wish they taught me about banking. I wish they taught me about credit. Right, I didn't get any of those lessons, but I learned how to pay. I learned how to pay rent. Trailing off again, right? Because again, it's the end of the evening, isn't it? And we tend to lose our energy, but it was such a high energy day. It was such a lovely day that I had spending it with my sister, and I dedicated today to get that running around to do, and I did get a lot of that done. And also, I got all the paperwork that I needed done. It's a little bonus so I can get my lease for next year taken care of. I'll do that tomorrow. So I'll add that to my list of things to do tomorrow. Right? It's always moving forward. And we got this word tonight, right? And in acceptance. And it's a good word. And I don't know how it's going to play out. Maybe, I think that I accept myself fully. But maybe I don't. Maybe there's something for me to contemplate. And I'm obviously we have the word this week, right? That maybe, tomorrow morning I will wake up with new insights and ideas, right? On how to go about talking about acceptance, because we're going to be talking about it all week. So, maybe this is one of these words because in the moment I'm thinking, I don't know, acceptance, right? But maybe we can look at it in a perspective of a little bit of differences and talk about differences a little bit. Yeah, that might be a good way to come about it tomorrow, is looking at the uniqueness in each of us and being able to accept ourselves in those uniquenesses, right? It's right. I never thought that I was unique, right? Up until a few years ago, right? Again, it was that idea that I was just being tolerated, but at the same time, despite anything, despite anyone, I was going to make the best life for myself. I understood I was kinked. Right? It was drilled in, right? It was programmed into me. There was something not quite right. There was something fundamentally wrong. This is the programming, right? But despite that, and this is from my dad being the example for me, my dad being the evidence because he had that congenital heart disease, because he got that death sentence from that heart doctor when he was still in his late teens, that he was not going to live for much longer, and yet he lived to be 47 years old, right? and he sucked up every moment he possibly could. He loved life. He did not waste a moment of his life. And I think because I led by that example, because I loved my father, I wanted to be on every single experience, every single adventure. I was very trauma bonding with my father, right? My father was a commercial fisherman. He wasn't home all the time to watch over me, but when he was, like, I must have drove my father absolutely bonkers the way that I clung to him, right? But at a young age like that, right? You're looking at it, you're clinging for dear life, right? Like, oh my goodness, right? And your parents are supposed to be like your saviors, aren't they? They're your guardians. They're the ones that you don't you don't get to make any movement. You don't have any understanding on how to take care of yourself. These are your caregivers, right? But because I felt kinked, because I felt like I was being tolerated, and being able to recognize that acceptance. My father, I never felt, right? I felt nothing but love and acceptance and from my father. So right? Maybe there's a lesson in that. And again, it's in that middle, right? But somehow that programming did get through, right? I wouldn't have ended up with the problems that I had as a teenager and as a young adult if that programming hadn't done its job. It was, I feel, with intent, right? Even though I clung to my father like he was God himself, I would have to say my mother thought she was too. So, and I'm not to say whether or not she was or not, because I'm looking at all of this in the perspective of the small child that I was. We've gone into details and we will continue to talk about it, a little bit of that background, but it's just, for there are people who have been with me for my years, so they kind of reading between the lines because they know of that dynamic relationship that I had with my mother, right? And I call it dynamic, but it was actually quite traumatic. And you could say that, right? But Cindy, you're empathic, you're highly sensitive. That's how it's going to impact you. Yeah, possibly. I am sensitive and I am empathic, but there are boundaries, right? And you don't attack with intent, and you don't physically do harm to others, specifically your own children. And that's all I'll say today about that, because I just wanted to keep that light and I just wanted to keep it as a first kind of impression. But I guess this week, right, we're going to be doing a little bit of work. We're going to look back, and if you're hanging out with me, you probably got a little bit of trauma going on in your life, or you probably even might have quite a bit of it, right? Maybe sometimes when that trauma happens, in the complex trauma, we don't even recognize that. Even for me, I woke up to some of these ideas well into my 50s, and if you had asked me before then, I'd say, "Oh, everything's fine, right? There's nothing to work on, there are no problems." That was right. Right, that was just the person that I wasn't going to let it bother me, because despite that, I was living my life. I was experiencing my life, and I was just reminding myself every single day that I am my father's daughter. I am my father's daughter, right? And we all know you can fight that no matter what. But right, maybe a little bit more, because that was the influence that I wanted to be imprinted by. So maybe there was more on that side, but I'm just as much my mother's daughter too. And even though that dynamic relationship was painful, there were lots of lessons in there. And, if my mother, right, my mother had lots of amazing, super duper traits about her. And I would like to think that, I picked up on some of those and then just maybe put to the side those things that aren't right. But, to anybody to tell me that maybe I'm exaggerating on the situation, I don't know, right? I have to say no. There is no excuse. You could say, but it was in the 70s, No, no, no. When you're actually trying to take somebody out and you're blank in that process, like just blank, you're just going in for the kill. No, there's something kinked in that. And so I will be my father's daughter. I will trauma bond. I will adapt and conquer. I will ride the waves. I will neither be seen or be heard. I will fawn. I will freeze. I will do whatever is necessary in order to survive the moment, because knowing that the moment will eventually just be something from the past, right? And that's good, right? That's good. And then waking up to realize that a lot of those problems that I had, right, were because of those experiences that I had, right? And a lot of those things that I'm overcoming in my own limiting beliefs, I may or may not ever be able to achieve. But I know for as the evidence for myself, right? In say the past even half a dozen years, right? I have to say I'm making some movement. I'm making some movement in that. And if I can carry on with that and right, I'm not using that despite anymore. I don't need to, because I'm truly, truly working and understanding what went wrong. And it only takes a sympathetic, compassionate me to be able to put myself in my own shoes, not in anybody else's shoes, right? Put myself in my own shoes as that child, as I was, and look at that situation and go, yeah, there was something kinked in that, right? It still leaves us with the problems. We still have to overcome ourselves. We have to overcome that programming, right? We can't just give it to somebody else to deal with it. We have to deal with it, right? Through our choices, right? Making that difficult choice. Because who wants to look at the past? Who wants to look at those difficult moments? Who wants to look at their caregivers and be reminded that, right? Maybe you weren't the good child, right? And I tried, even when it was difficult, I always tried to be the good daughter, right? It didn't always work out for me, right? But despite I was making my own life, I'll do the best that I can, right? To be tolerated. Wasn't that sad? I'll do my very best to make sure that, right, you don't have to tolerate me too much. Stay out of your way, right? Try not to be too needy, right? All in attempt to be accepted, and it never ever worked. It always backfired. It was toleration within my own family, and it just felt that way my entire life. But I'm gonna have to say, right, in that negative attitude that it brought about in me, right, I was that gasoline. The fire, the embers, they're going. But when I'm spewing gasoline on that, right, there wasn't any chance, right? And it wasn't any chance. And you can blame people for abusing, right? That goodness, or seeing that light in me and making it work for them, right? But that's still light and it still needs to be used. And I think they were just as much unaware of how that experience for me was dimming my light as I was all my life, right? Now to wake up at 57 years old and have that opportunity to possibly um, make a difference in my own life and to do a little bit of course correcting. I'm up for that challenge. I'm up for that challenge, right? And I think it only takes somebody who's capable of accepting themselves in their state, accept themselves right now, and then just work on it. Just, right? Add more acceptance, right? More realization, more experience. And we'll see tomorrow, won't we? We'll see tomorrow where this takes us. I think we're going to talk about differences when it comes to acceptances, right? A little bit of how we have expectations and, um, that that matchy. You know what I mean? Not accepting the not accepting the uniqueness, not accepting the differences in each other, not accepting the disabilities in each other, right? And us who are not being accepted, trying to be accepted by adapting ourselves, by dressing ourselves up, for making our tone of voices go down, taking on interests that aren't interests of ours, but interests of the people we would like to be accepted by, right? But we'll talk about that maybe tomorrow. It's on my mind, so we'll see. I'll wake up tomorrow. We'll take a totally different perspective on that. But yeah, just so you know where we're going on this. I go at this through my experiences, and it's not painful because it's in the past now, right? But the thing is, the residue and the symptoms that we have out of the residue that still stays in our system, sometimes for our entire life, right? And it's strange because I never realized that there was any residue, right? Right? Well, maybe there was, right? Maybe in part of those, but that's for another day. See, I could go on. I could go on for an hour because I'm working it now as we're talking about it. I can tell already. So I'm just going to go. I was going to say make a cup of coffee, but I got a cup of coffee here. I'm going to take in some lessons, see what comes across my path, right? However it comes across my path, and hopefully it's easily digestible, and be able to be regurgitate. Is that what's the word? Regurgitated tomorrow. Oh, that's not a nice way of saying it, is it? In sharing my experience and coming fresh like a loaf of bread every single day, I will be in tomorrow to share what comes across my path. That sounds a little bit better. Regurgitated, where did I come from? Okay, you guys, I'm tired. It's time for pajamas, brush my teeth, and a few lessons, my coffee, and then off to bed. Oh, yeah, off to bed. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.